Welcome to your Everyday Life podcast with words of encouragement. We hope that you walk away today in your everyday walking around kind of life, feeling energized by the words of encouragement you are about to hear. Each week, the message will inspire you in your plain old ordinary life. Knowing that Jesus is there with you every step of the day and not somewhere far off will give you new perspectives of your daily life. You can find us online at youreverydaylife.org. Go there and subscribe so you can get new weekly devotional blog posts in addition to the many posts on site. So be encouraged in your everyday life. And now, here are your hosts, Scott Ramsey and his wife, Carmen.
Welcome, everybody. We're excited to have you. Welcome back to our podcast. And today we have some special guests with us, really special to us. And so we're excited about jumping in to see what they have to share with us about their everyday walk with the Lord, because that's what this podcast is about, your everyday walk with Christ. And so, Dean and Nancy, welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, matter of fact, Carmen, they drove all the way from Fort Wayne, Indiana to be down here in Weeki Wachee, Florida with us to work with us this week. And so we had to get this podcast in while they were here. So we're excited about you guys making that trip. And Carmen, you want to do a little more of a formal introduction of Dean and Nancy?
Yeah, just give you a little backstory on us. We all were part of a faith-based franchise, and that's how we connected with Dean and Nancy. And God met us where I firmly believe He brought our paths together, and we've been best friends ever since. And Dean and Nancy, like, they are the epitome. I've said it about Scott and I. They're like peanut butter and jelly. You can't have one without the other. So,
and we'll get into that today as we share.
The cutest. They're just awesome. So they also got us into short-term rentals. So they're all about loving on people. You couldn't meet two better people. So we're extremely happy to have you guys here, and just let them share their story about what it looks like for them, a day in the life of Dean and Nancy Rooster and their walk with God.
So I do have to do a shameless little plug here. So like Carmen said, you two got us into short-term rental. Thank you. Because really that's a gift and a strength of Carmen's. And I think you guys recognize that. And so that's where we are now. We're at Chateau Mariposa. And this is our project, our short-term rental that we're getting ready. That's why they came all the way down here to help us work on this, to get that off the ground. And so we're going to talk about their journey in that as well. But we want to get started just by asking you two, when we talk about that everyday walk with Jesus, where did that journey start for each of you? Nancy, can we start with you?
Well, I grew up in the church, so my journey's been in and out all these years. I've really grew when Dean and I met. We're a second marriage. We've been married almost 20 years in May. God's a giver of second chances, and we're thankful for that. But just growing together in our faith, and just recently really feeling like God wants us to simplify.
Okay. Yeah. And we're going to get into that today. That's going to be like our topic to be able to dig into, because that's really crucial, I think, for everybody, right? To be able to be more focused. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But was there a point, Nancy, in your life where you felt like, you've had that walk, you've had that understanding of who Jesus is most of your life. You grew up in the church, so to speak. But was there a turning point for you where, hey, this is really real to me now? Or has that always just been a part of your journey?
Actually, yeah. Through my son-in-law being a pastor at our church and taking us through a program called Rooted. Okay. I actually was baptized at 13, have walked with the Lord, but not really owned my faith. And at that point, my eyes were more open to, I have to make this my own. So I was baptized again and just really kind of surrendered some strongholds in my life that I wrestled with, and still it's in and out, but God is my Savior and forgives when I fail. But yeah, that was really a turning point. That was probably 3 years ago that I made that decision to just really make it my own.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just, I think I'm speaking on our behalf, that just from how long we've known you two, I wouldn't have guessed that was not that wasn't a turning point, but I always felt like you two kind of had it together. And not that you didn't. You need to qualify.
I was going to say, that's
I don't want that to come across wrong. But I mean, I think a lot of people, from my point of view, probably look toward you two. A great model of a Christian couple and the way you should be living your life. So, but you took it to another level at that moment then.
I think our
guess is the
faith
way I
is
would
always growing, and that's
Yeah.
if God is always trying to weed out those things in our life that He wants to refine us in. And I had some areas that I just needed to be different in.
Yeah.
And one of it was just really knowing that this is my faith, not my parents', not what I learned as a little child because it's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I own this now, and I want full surrender.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Dee, how about for you? Where did your journey begin?
Really, when we talk about our faith thing, I grew up in a different church, so now our church is, our Bible is our church, really, right? Yeah. And so whatever we learn from the Bible, that's where we go with that. But so we've been married now 20 years, like you said, and we actually my stepson said, "Why don't we go to church?" Shortly after we got married, and that was at that point. So look where we were at that point. We were just trying to work hard, and we thought it was all based on what our work that we could do and become successful in this world, right?
Well, we're baby boomers, Dee. Pull the bootstraps up and make it happen.
That's right. And so when we pondered that question, after he asked it, we were like, yeah, let's go to church. So we started going back to church, then a Bible just opened up for me, and I couldn't get enough of it. And so I got baptized shortly after that. That started my faith journey, just seeking life as Jesus would have us do life. Mm-hmm. And I actually got to then baptize Nancy after she went through the Rooted program. How many years later was that?
17 years.
17 years later, yeah. So that's really awesome. Mm-hmm. Whenever someone gets baptized, even if I don't know them, I cry every time.
That's awesome.
That's how it just, it's just amazing.
It's a new life, Exciting. Yeah. So I think we've all talked about this before, but Carmen and I smile and giggle about it a little bit when we reflect on the two of you and your childlike faith, Dean. And because you're like me, we're aging, but you're still like a little kid, especially when it comes to your faith, and that's so refreshing. So cool. So along your journey, I have to be careful using this word just because of our culture and how we've learned to define certain things. And so that word busy is a bad word, isn't it? To be busy, just to be doing stuff isn't a good thing. We can lose our focus. We become unproductive, I guess, if we could say it that way. But I think everybody goes through that experience of, maybe especially if you're somebody that's really responsible, you can go over the top and become too responsible and take on other people's responsibilities. And before you know it, you're doing 10 different things because you're doing things for other people too. And all of a sudden you become too busy and you really lose your focus. So today we want to talk about that a little bit, is that simplicity. So do you two have any thoughts of where you want to start with that and how that reflects on, why you wanted to talk about that, where your life was, where it is, where you see it going?
You want to, or you want me to?
Go ahead. Yeah. I'll just jump in wherever.
Yeah, I guess we had, our faith-based franchise that we shared with Carmen, and also got to a point where it really was kind of running itself. So we started doing a creative outlet because we love to be creative. Yes. And started staging homes. On top of that, we were doing Airbnb all kind of happened through this little shed that we have.
Which is awesome, by the way. You get a chance. Where do we go to check that out,
You
Nancy?
can go to the TinyShedFW for FortWayne.com.
You got to check it out. You see it and you'll want to go there.
So that's been a blessing to us. The staging was just such a fun, creative outlet, but exploded. So we were staging way more than we even imagined. At one point, we had 10 homes, which this was a side hustle.
So now wait a minute. You're staging homes, like these builders are building these homes,
Yes.
and you're staging
Brand new homes for builders.
Yeah, and you're doing short-term rental.
Right.
You have the tiny shed,
Mm-hmm.
but you're also like renting rooms out of your house too, right?
Yes.
So you've got all that going on, and by the way, you have a
Our bread and
commercial
butter
cleaning
job.
business, and you have other responsibilities too, right?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway,
Right.
yeah. Go ahead.
Grandkids came along the way.
Yeah.
But we just got to the point where we were staging a lot. It was consuming a lot of our time. In the process, some things changed in our commercial cleaning business where we needed to step back into the business more. I had some
Talking
management.
about some of those things that a lot of small businesses went
Right.
through, the whole COVID thing, but
Staffing
that
shortages.
didn't slow you guys down, but it was the staffing shortages, lack of finding employees to plug in. Yeah. Go ahead.
So we had to jump back in on top of staging. So maybe you can share what we had some events this summer that really opened our eyes to maybe we need to make some changes. So.
But before that, if you can
go
hold
ahead.
that thought, I mean, you guys really, on the staging thing, you guys became, I guess from my point of view, like premier stagers, right? I mean, that really took off for you. And it by default, it became a focus.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we're passionate about it, and we really poured a lot into it, and just
God opened doors for us that we never imagined in that business.
Honored to get to stage for some really phenomenal builders in Fort Wayne and beautiful homes, and that creative outlet was just so fun.
Yeah, and we get to experience part of that, by the way, with being friends with them and with what they're helping us with, and that's why we wanted them to come down. We were so excited about you guys coming. So, Dean, you were going to go get into what happened with that, how that kind of overwhelmed.
Then the overwhelming came. So first we were starting to realize that in the staging part of it, we were staging late at night, trying to manage our business because we had to step back in, even up to frontline work. We were out there doing stuff at night. We'd start at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was not unusual to be out there still at 10 o'clock or 10:30 at night. So we'd go out and do some of that. Then we'd switch and do something else, and then get our Airbnb ready, and then we'd go and stage some homes, move some furniture. That's all part of staging. Everyone thinks it's a little glamorous, but there is a part that's hard work. And weather conditions play into that as well.
Wow. Yeah.
And so whether it was freezing cold or 100 degrees out, 100% humidity, we were out there doing it and trying to meet all those commitments at the same time. And there was another component to that I think I just want to throw in there is that Nancy's parents are in their 90s, and we had committed to helping them through the aging process. They lived in Sacramento, California, and they moved to Fort Wayne close to us so we could help them out. And so that pulled us away during the week too. So whatever situations they had. So, you feel the stress rising? I don't want to go back.
Dean's reliving it right now.
And so through COVID and all that, so we had planned a family trip, and I was on this trip, and I was having some pain and didn't know what it was. Struggled through that whole thing, got back, ended up in the hospital. Doctor walks into the room, he goes, well, let's have a look at, I had some lesions here or whatever. And so I pull up my shirt, and he's like, you have shingles. It was very obvious to him. So I got shingles,
And that's brought on by
stress.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I started my medication for that, and I wasn't even through my medication, and I got COVID.
Yeah.
So shingles is a virus, COVID is a virus, and I was down for
3 weeks.
3 weeks. And
That's
so imagine
very unusual for Dean Reisker. I mean, you're a workhorse.
Imagine,
So, yeah.
you're busy all day, every day, and then 3 weeks you can't get off the sofa. And so there's a mental thing that happens. Physically, you're fighting it. That was rough. And so Nancy had to be on the sidelines and all that. And she got a little sick too and worked her way through that.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like? I mean, again, you guys are always together. Like anyone who knows you don't see the other without the other. So not having Dean around to help you in all those things, you always leaned on each other. What did that look like for you? And when did you finally have you started hearing like God talking to you about that? Like, what was that?
I'm sitting in my car. He's sick. And we had let our manager go, and we were short-staffed, and it's like I have to go out and clean by myself, which I know that sounds like a big deal, but we are always together. We have a rhythm that we do together. He's
and you
at
hadn't
home
done that for how many years?
3.5 years.
It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm out by myself. I'm worried about him being at home because he just was not improving, and I'm having to go out and clean buildings. So I just sat in my car and cried as such a baby, but it was like, so overwhelming. And in the middle of that, a house came up to be destaged, and it's just me.
oh, wow.
He can't help me. I'm so thankful for the MBN builders that they just got guys there. We borrowed a truck from our co-staging business that we're very close with. And Michael, our manager, hopped in with me, and we loaded the truck, took it to the next house. And Aaron and Grace, who are also in the same cleaning business, they came in and helped me stage a house.
Wow.
And I'm just thinking, God, you're telling us we are maxed out. This is no way to live. We need to take something off our plate. And I felt really strongly that we needed to take the staging off our plate. And it was the thing we loved the most.
Mm-hmm.
And at 2 months, every time I talked about it, I teared up because it's just so fills our creative outlet. But I knew that was the thing he wanted us to remove. It just was too much.
Yeah. So what does that mean now to think about, okay, we need to simplify. What does, if I hear you say that, I'm not sure exactly, gosh, simplify, what's that mean?
You still got to make a living, right?
It means you talk through, it's like, what is God saying and what are we going to do about it? Our son-in-law taught us that years ago, and it was very clear God was saying, you don't have time to serve. You are so busy. Everyone knows you as being busy, even though you're together. We couldn't have people in our home for a meal anymore. It just was, he's an introverted extrovert, and to even try to squeeze that in, I'm an extrovert, was like too much for him. And it's like God just said, I'll give you a way. I'll make a way. And just obey what I'm asking you to do. So giving up the thing we love the most.
I know, just like when they would stage, I remember I helped you guys one time. I was in town, and it was a penthouse apartment basically, right? And it had this beautiful panoramic sky view of the city. And the physical component of that, and we're not, in our 20s. Not going to say how old we are. We're not in our 20s. And then the dynamics of having to fit that couch in through a door, it seemed like cramming it into that tiny, and we had to meet it at the top, and then getting it in the little skinny hallway and all of that, the staging is awesome, but the physical, it was very physically demanding for you guys. I was just like, and then when you said when Dean was sick and couldn't help you with that, and because that would be the last thing I would want to let go too, honestly. Yeah, but the physical part would be a lot.
So I want to share something here that this just came to mind, dropped in my little brain here. And that's that I believe it's Proverbs 19:12 that says, many are the plans of man, but it's the purpose of God that prevails. And so I think about you two and all that you've been doing, and many are your plans. But through all that, even though you're feeling like, okay, we need to simplify here, I just like to say that God's purpose still prevailed through you guys, because I think of God's purpose being reflecting him. That's what he wants. That's his purpose. He wants to be reflected to everybody. He wants to know everyone personally. And he does that through us to other people that don't know him. So God's purpose was still prevailing, but now you've decided, okay, we really want to be more focused on be able to do that in a way where you're not too busy, you're not overwhelmed by everything, and you can really settle into that.
Nancy, can you share what you were sharing early about people's perception of you guys being busy? But if you could share that, because I think that really
so many people would say, you guys are so busy. I know you're so busy. And yes.
I hate to bother you. You're so busy.
We didn't want to be known that way. But on the flip side of it, what they didn't know was that in our busyness, which made us more busy, was there were opportunities that we could take to just relationship with people, to share with people, to maybe mentor people, stop and have a meal with people, which always made us late. We are known for being late, which makes us look more busy. But I think neither one of us wanted to be known as busy because they didn't see the side that nobody sees.
Yeah. Well, and you had mentioned Priscilla and Aquila. You want to talk about that a little bit? The parallel?
We always knew of Priscilla and Aquila. Nobody ever really puts a point on it. Like you got to go through it and, that's an interesting little couple in there. But when you really read into their journey, they were always known for hospitality, basically, because they would bring people in their home, and they would have church in their home too. And for some reason that really connected with us, because we like to have people in our home. We've done it since we started our journeys 20 years ago.
But they were always seen together in the Bible.
And if somebody wants to read their story, where are they in the Bible?
In Acts.
In Acts? Okay.
Yeah. And when I forget who it was that he was in the way, so he was following Jesus, but he didn't have all the facts. And Priscilla and Aquila brought him into their home and taught him things that they learned through being with the apostles.
Yeah.
So they're like a model husband and wife team. They followed Paul to different locations. They were tent makers. They're just salt of the earth people, I feel like. But they were always together.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned this earlier. Somebody calls you, if they reach you, they know Dean's right next to like, hey Dean, even though and vice versa, right? You guys are always
and
right
if we're not, they're like, what?
Even though I'm screwing a leg on a piece of furniture over on the other side of the room. Hi, Dean.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I think that speaks volumes about both of you.
Definitely,
it really does.
Definitely. So as we were talking about simplicity a little bit, so this verse, I did a little bit of a Google search here, and it says out of 2 Corinthians 1:12, for our boast is this, the testimony of our conscience, that we behaved in the world with simplicity and godly sincerity. So now you're simplifying. So what are some, you talked about, okay, we've given up the staging business, which was huge. Matter of fact, some of this furniture you're looking at came from that we bought from these guys.
We got first pick.
So that's one step. Are there other things you think about when, okay, here's what we need to do to simplify, because I think of simplifying as to become more focused. What does that mean for you guys?
Unloading our plate.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And so obviously, you're not just going to sit around and hang out or whatever. And there is a process, right? We're still going through this process of selling our business.
You can maybe share that. That kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Last March, and we just were like, I don't know if we're ready for that. We're not ready to retire.
So it was a God thing, kind of plant some seeds there so you guys would be prepared for it. Yeah.
Could not have fallen in place better. It's so God's hand, because it's like a puzzle, just every piece fit. And can maybe share.
So as we first, which one did we do first? Like, we decided on getting out of staging first. The
That's
Airbnb, the short-term rental never lost the spectrum of that. That always was something that we knew was a hospitality thing that we always
That's
would.
Part of the.
We always would do that. I feel like,
people coming by and
Yeah.
sit at the table with you, and you guys,
We want to love on people. In fact, we've been in construction, adding on to it to make it a better space, more private for our guests, but
Amazing
we still get
space.
to interact.
Which was another piece of our busyness that we didn't throw in there. We also had an old garage torn down, and then we built a new garage, and we added onto the tiny shed. That process through the COVID and not being able to get building materials, and then the spike in prices and just all of that going on, huge stressor for what we were already dealing with. So that,
And if I may say something to that, their tiny shed was always adorable. It started up as they did pop-up. You and your daughters, daughter-in-law, did pop-up sales out of it. And one thing led to another. So you guys decided to do glamping, if you've ever heard anything about that. But then it is stunning since they've remodeled and added on to it. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm obsessed with it. If you get a chance, seriously, to check them out. They are also on Instagram, the TinyShedFW. Definitely book on their .com, Tiny Shed, the Tiny Shed, right? The TinyShedFW.com. But and you cannot leave there. And if you leave there and don't feel loved, there's something wrong. Like the moment you step in, every little detail of it is Dean and Nancy loving on you.
Yeah.
Seriously, it really is.
So that's kind of, when I think about that's kind of the Priscilla Aquila thing. People are stopping by. You're building into them. You're impacting their lives through reflecting Christ in the way you live your life, which is your everyday walk with Jesus. Just let Him live through you and reflect that to other people. So that's becoming the focus. It's making things, you're simplifying things. So now you have time to focus on it. And thinking about, you guys have a couple of grandkids.
Yes.
So that's something, that's priority, right?
Yeah.
Those are priorities.
We have 3 grandkids that we were not having time to go visit. So
Can't do that with a busy life. Yeah.
No. And I think with the business, we were back and forth on that. Is this really going to happen? I don't know that we're ready by January 1st. And God just really, I think, just when you submit to what He wants you to do, even though it's hard, He figures out the pieces and the way to make a living. And we have to change our lifestyle, but it's simplifying your lifestyle means you may not make the big bucks anymore, but what's better? Quality over quantity,
But you're walking
over profit.
Well, you mentioned a key word there without saying it, and that's trust.
Yeah.
It's trusting in Him.
Yeah, you're walking out in faith, and He's
Stepping out,
providing. He's making, like you said, He's making a way.
It's back to depending on Him every month.
Right?
Yeah,
that's part of that journey. That's awesome.
And part of the process of going through that too is, as we process mentally, like, to let go of all those things. What does God have for us now? What is the next step?
Yeah.
We knew He was asking us to let go, and I think the whole thing of that is just praying about it, talking about it constantly, like morning and night, whenever we have those moments to just say, what other things does God have for us? And, through the relationships and all that, I think He was taking us on this journey. We always knew that was our connecting point. Once we decided to do some of those things, I actually became an elder in our church.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would have just been out of question, obviously, with all this going on. So we want to participate there more
Serve more,
as
yeah.
well, and
Yeah.
become part of that family in our church.
Nancy, you made the comment about not trading one busy for another. Do you guys have, there has to be an intentionality with that.
Right.
And then do you guys have like guards in place, or have discussed like, okay, if we see like a safe word, if you're in, a setting like just making sure.
I think part of it is just never knew it till we bought our franchise, but I guess we're entrepreneurs at heart. So it's kind of easy to think about what's something else we can do, but learning to live within our means on a budget again, simplifying that way. Just, we don't, you just have to be intentional now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good. That's discipline. I think God wants us disciplined that way.
Mm-hmm.
And actually one of the elders at our church shared that and said, people usually trade one for the other. And it's like, we are going to have to really be intentional about not.
So that is our buzzword.
Yeah.
We're not trading this busy for that busy. We're just not.
And it's so easy to do, especially like you said, if you're entrepreneurs at heart, because it's not like you intentionally sought out staging or anything. People saw that you have a gift, and we talk about God's giftings, called to create. That's a wonderful book. But yeah, and so you're passionate about it. I can see how easy it would be to fall back into saying yes to that. But right now, like God's telling, I feel from being with you guys and knowing you guys, God's telling you that your yes is hospitality, that and each other and your family, in that way, that's the season, and that's,
we want to be able to invite people in our space. We had committed to do that last winter. We were doing it pretty regularly, but then we got more busy. The spring is when the staging season ramps up, and just the business changing, shifting, and where it was just too much time with people for an introvert. He can always manage, but he needed that downtime in that space. But now it's like we really want to be intentional. There's nothing like having people at your table to get to know them, to share if they're struggling, and just pour into whatever God brings us. But those meals, that's really important. We love to cook for people and have them at our table, and that's kind of our focus of sharing Him.
Yeah. So if you're an introvert, don't use that as an excuse. I know that the Spirit in me loves people, and we love to love on people through hospitality. But the physical part of me, and I know you're an introvert as well, you just need some downtime once in a while, and that's okay. You can take an afternoon and chill out, and that's refreshing.
Can't be on all the time.
Right.
You've got to be off.
And I tend to squeeze one more in. So I'm learning to respect him and say, okay, I know that's too much for you. You need some just quiet space.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of two things that I want to follow up here on this one real quick, and that's just strengths. So obviously you guys have some great strengths in creativity, that entrepreneurism, and you're tying that into your short-term rental, the tiny shed and some other things you're doing along with that. And so that's allowing you to really utilize your strengths because you're not so busy. So you can be more focused. That's one thing that I think of, which I think is awesome, because you guys have some great strengths in that area that God really can utilize to impact others. And He's already shown that through what you guys have done the last couple of years with that. But the other thing is, so at one point, you guys probably, and I'm making this assumption, but I think there's other people out here that have gone through this. They felt, and maybe you felt so buried, like you were wondering, where is the light at the end of the tunnel? How are we going to get out of this busyness, this cycle, this hole that we're in, doing this, doing that, and the other, and wearing ourselves out? How are we going to get to that point where our life is simple enough where we can really be effective at what we really need and want to do? How how do you get out of that? How in that journey?
I feel like sometimes you have to give up the thing you like the most. You know, it might be, you know, younger parents, their kids are in lots of activities and they have different functions that we're doing. You know, a lot of parents have to work 2 jobs, but maybe saying no to some of that stuff. Us saying no to our staging was so hard, but I know God will fill that cup. He wants us to fill it with Him, not with things and activities. And I just feel like there's always something you can take off your plate, even if it's one thing, clearing one night a week, you know.
So maybe, so I don't know if you physically do this, but make a list. Look at all those things you're doing and look at, okay, what is it we can or want to give up, or we can look at making adjustments. Is that
what furthers the kingdom?
okay?
I can speak to that too. So in doing that, this is something that if anyone is deciding to do that, to make a change like that in their life, I don't know how we ever came up with this, but all we did was turn to the people we were already working with and we said, you know, we're too busy. We're getting older and we want to not do this anymore. But because of the relationships that we built with those people, they asked if there was anything else that we wanted to still do with them. So as we exited, we still are connected with the cleaning company, the cleaning business, because they kept us on for a time, part-time. And even in the staging, we were sharing a warehouse with some friends who were in the same business. And so we shared warehouse space, and we offered to them, you know, if there was anything we could do to help them because we have more time. And they were more than excited to say, hey, whatever you want to do, just come in and work however you want to work.
So you got rid of the busyness. I know that's maybe not the best way to put it, but you kept the relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we have a
Absolutely.
choice. So if we feel like it put that flexibility that we are free spirits, we like the flexibility, but they're under terms of if we want to travel to see the grandkids, if we want to do ministry things, that we can go. We're not tied to anything now. And even our Airbnb, that can be our short-term rental, we can hire someone to clean when we're gone, like this week. But we can come here and help you guys. We have been trying to do this for months. And now it's like we don't have to worry about emails. We don't have to worry about any responsibilities. And we can just come and love on you guys and share the gifts that God's given us to help remodel and paint and love on you guys right now.
And it's funny because our journey's been the same, because in our franchise, and then when God was telling us it was time to step out of that, it was too much. It was the same thing for us, you know. And we still obviously have kept relationships, have multiple people in the franchise and other people that are dear friends that were customers when we had a business, but stepped out of that. And I like design, like Nancy likes design, and Scott's handy, like Dean's handy. I mean, it's very similar paths that we travel.
4 peas in a pod.
Absolutely.
So connected.
Absolutely.
And they would joke at the retreats. They're like, "Oh, well, Dean and Nancy and Scott and Carmen are together." It's always like that. But
Well, I just have to, I think we talked about this before, but I remember that first annual retreat that we were at with the franchise system we're all a part of. And remember seeing this couple, you know, because you're checking everybody out, right? And you're like, oh gosh, this is our first time with all these other business owners, you know, at this annual, you know, retreat for the business owners. And it's like, well, look at that couple. They look pretty with it. They, you know, they're a good looking couple. And
Scott totally does that when he's like,
I do.
I don't do that. But Scott
I was like, man, they're way above our head. We'll probably never get to know them. Who else is in here, you know? And you guys are probably the most down to earth people that we've gotten to know, and the impact that you've had on our lives over the years.
But we looked at you and said
Yeah, we
we
felt
could
the
really
same.
glean off of you
Yeah.
because you've been doing it longer, and we felt connected, and it just started our journey of our
Not
awesome
funny.
friendships.
I know.
But I do have to say that I think with us, when we got to that point, because I don't even know if the word busy fits. We were just over the top. Like,
It was a blessing that God led us to it, and it led us to where we're at now. I mean, it was a blessing in that part of our life.
Yeah, but with my personal journey, that was my bucket. That was my fulfillment. And I think, I've alluded to this in some of my blog posts, as well as probably a podcast or two, that, I became so jaded that I felt like I had to do it myself. And I tried not to dishonor God in that. I tried to blame it on God's people, not God himself. That was my way of still feeling spiritual, even though I wasn't even close.
Yeah.
But when we started making some changes there and realizing that something needs to change in our lives, that simplicity that you're talking about, that's when Carmen was able to do some things that were on her heart. And that was literally a change agent for me in realizing where I needed to get back to in my relationship, with God and my everyday walk with Jesus, which, see this, that's why I like putting this out to remind me, Living with Jesus Today. This is a book out of probably back in the 70s, without opening it up and looking at it. But so Living with Jesus Today, that Juan Carlos Ortiz, in his story in there, had a major impact on me, and just how simple, as we're talking about simplicity, that walk with Jesus is in our everyday life. It's not a Wednesday or Sunday thing. It's a everyday thing. And him walking with us and being a part of our podcast here together as we're all sharing, and us just being a blessing to him because he's such a blessing to us. And it's that personal relationship, right? So that's what I hear you guys talking about, but that we've seen throughout the years and knowing you guys. So thank you for that. So let's look at some closing thoughts on this journey with Jesus, in that simplicity. Dean or Nancy, you guys have any, something you want us to walk away with or think about going from here in that simplicity?
This is great because I get to use my quote that I always use.
Go for it.
So here it is. We used to tell our kids this all the time because we're trying to teach them to be on their own, right? And so they're all, a lot of culture today wants to protect these kids, but we always tried to train our kids that someday you'll be on your own and you'll have to make decisions on your own. And so I would always say to them, no matter where you go, there you are. So with that, when I think about that, if you have Jesus in that equation, no matter where you go, there you are with Jesus. And you can, because that you can speak to him, you can be there with him, he's there with you. You're never really alone, but use that as him as your guide. He taught us how to live, and live your life that way and keeping him close, and he'll take you in the right path.
Absolutely. That's good. Where you are,
no matter where you go,
no matter where you go, there you are.
are.
And Jesus is right there with you.
Still the same person,
good.
yeah.
Nancy,
Yeah.
closing thoughts?
I guess I think of God's a giver of second chances. So sometimes we get in so deep and it's like, how do I back out of this? And, maybe there's mistakes you've made along the way. We wish we'd have spent more time or had more time. Start where you are. God will honor that.
It's good.
We have relationships that we are still working on in our life from choices we've made. But what's most important is this world's going to go away. And if we aren't kingdom focused, none of this matters. So God wants us to rely on him. Give us our daily bread, not more, not too little, and he'll take care of us.
Wow, that's heavy. That's good. Love it. Carmen, any closing thoughts for you?
No, just that if you have the opportunity, if you were to meet Dean and Nancy in person, wherever they go, whatever they do, whoever they encounter, they leave a mark. They leave a mark on your heart. So they're really great people. I'm like, this is one of my favorites because you guys are my favorites. Sorry, everybody else. I love you guys too. But these are our besties. So
Yes.
yeah, I was really excited that you guys are doing this with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is about our everyday walk with Jesus. That's what we want people to hear and know. And it is a journey, and we're all getting better at it. We're in Jesus. We're learning how to make you more and more a part of our everyday life. And so that's what we want you all to walk away with today, just from this podcast, is just realize the simplicity of life and bringing it down to your life, making it simple so that you can have that focus, that kingdom focus, and that focus on walking with Jesus. So as we go today, we want you to keep that in mind, that remember that everyday walk and how essential that is with Him. So thank you, and God bless you. Thank you guys for being a part of the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this week on Your Everyday Life podcast. We pray that you were encouraged. Make sure to visit our website at youreverydaylife.org, where you can subscribe and receive weekly devotional blogs from Scott. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Your Everyday Life. Be sure to give us a comment on how words of encouragement has inspired you, and pass the word on to a friend who you know needs encouragement. Be sure to tune in again next week, when once again we will look at everyday life topics and apply words of encouragement. Until then, stay encouraged by what you heard today, and may you be greatly blessed.